This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving fintech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the fintech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing fintech plays in the world today. Okay, let's roll.
Hey guys, welcome to a very special Breaking Banks Europe episode. I'm Matteo Rizzi, the executive producer of the show, and here we are at the Singapore FinTech Festival. The show today is powered by the very own SFF podcast, the CXO Conversation. And as far as the Breaking Banks format is concerned, today is an ecosystem zoom-in. A very special one, an amazing one with Namibia. I'm here with Valeria Mbango and Tuna Brock from the Central Bank of Namibia. Valeria, Tuna, welcome to Breaking Banks Europe.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Let's start with the usual couple of minutes intro. Valeria, you want to start? Tell us who you are and what you do at the Central Bank of Namibia.
So my name is Valeria Mbango. I am the director responsible for strategy, projects, and transformation. We are relatively a new function within the bank. We were established around 3 years ago, and to a large extent, and I think relevant for this conversation, we are facilitating digital transformation for the bank, and we are very excited to have gone through that process.
My name is Tuna Brock. I am the Principal Innovation Hub Officer. I recently joined the bank. Prior to joining the bank, I'm coming directly from the fintech ecosystem. And I think the bank, with its commitment to innovation, wanted to bring an outsider with a different lens to shake things up a bit.
I'm super excited about this conversation because I believe this is roughly the 30th country that we explore. So even if our podcast is called Breaking Banks Europe, we like to extend our remit in showing different fintech ecosystems around the world. You know how fond I am. I mean, all the auditors know how fond I am about Africa. So every time I can show lights in an African ecosystem, I'm thrilled. So let's dig into it.
Okay.
Valeria, so maybe if I think about Namibia, I think about, beautiful landscape, natural resources, like wildlife, but maybe not fintech, right?
Yeah.
So I would be curious to understand, when in the country this whole movement started, you as a central bank, of course, you realize the need, I suppose, to both financial inclusion and digitization of financial services. So tell us a little bit about the genesis.
So I think that there has probably been movements already, I would say, from the 2010s or so, but I think in pockets, and I think generally even until this stage, our fintech ecosystem is quite nascent. But I think from a regulator perspective, we are interested in fintech from the perspective of using fintech to help advance some of our own policy objectives around financial inclusion, for example, as well as modernizing the financial system in general. So what we've tried to do in 2021, the bank put in place a fintech innovation framework. And that was really aimed at ensuring that where there is financial technology or people with business models that are not supported by our current regulatory framework, that there's a home for them within the central bank. And through the Innovation Hub, we've been operationalizing that. We've received a number of applications since 2021, and we are very excited. We've had one admission in the recent months, and we'll essentially be hand-holding them and just understanding how their technology works through our sandbox. And we've sort of defined certain parameters within which they will be operating. And the whole idea is that after a certain period of time, 6 months to be specific, we are then in a position to be able to admit them into the financial system, where they will be adding innovative products to complement what we already have in our ecosystem. To a large extent, I would also say that within the financial system, a lot of fintechs are mostly focusing on payment and enabling payment type of services. The wallets are quite popular. Even this admission that we've recently had, it's around innovating around the wallet solutions and enabling a solution that allows people to earn interest by pooling funds on their wallets, which is something new and which is something that we don't have. And so that's what we really want to do, to facilitate and be a catalyst in terms of availing innovative solution within the market for the benefit of Namibian people.
Tuna, you were in the fintech space. You're coming from the fintech space. You were mentioned.
Yes.
So today, if I am a fintech entrepreneur in Namibia, where do I go? What are my options?
So in Namibia, we do have quite a few. They're startups themselves, and they're offering incubation programs, accelerator programs. A lot of them are focusing more on the startup phase, with a few in the scale up phase. I think we need a little bit more in the scale-up phase. So a number of entrepreneurs, when they enter the country, this is where they would go and get directed and assisted. So there's quite a few programs that are available. And we're also establishing relationships with these various organizations that offer that, so that we have this complete chain from entering the market as a startup, scaling up, until you're ready to be, enter the regulatory space. So there's a lot of very passionate Namibians who really want to drive the startup scene and support Namibians and foreign investors to come in and get things moving.
Last year, if not the year before that, I think in us just starting to create this function and start to focus and create an enabling environment within the central bank for fintech, we did a survey with one of the local fintechs, actually, in collaboration with them, to try and understand from fintech companies what are some of their challenges and so forth. And one of the things that came out to a large extent was around financing. And of course, we are a central bank, we don't have money to give to people. But I think what also came out of that whole exercise for us is we realized that we need to, within the confines of our mandate, of course, and just always sort of making sure that it's aligned to the objectives of the bank. But we feel that we have a responsibility, and we are really working on trying to see, as a central bank, how do we help develop the fintech ecosystem. We've done a lot of benchmarking just in terms of other jurisdictions. For example, last year, we did a benchmarking with the Central Bank of Egypt. And we've seen how they've really played a role in just helping developing the fintech ecosystem. While we don't have money, how do we create strategic partnerships to be able to link fintechs, for example, to funders who are interested in that space? So we really want to play a more active role, just looking at the ecosystem as a whole and looking at how we as a central bank can add value in terms of that. To the extent that we are also exploring a partnership with, I want to say Elevandi, it's now GFTN. So we've also been engaging them to see how can we partner with them, how can they help us understand better our fintech ecosystem, and how do they help us add value, and how do we partner with relevant people to just develop that. Because at the end of the day, we want to regulate fintechs, but if there are no fintechs that are sort of getting to that level for regulation, then it serves no purpose. So we really want to make sure that we are just supporting as much and as relevant as we can.
Valeria, as an adult up to that, adding up to what you just said, you must be, as a central bank, by definition, at the center of a number of conversations with the actual financial institutions of the country, right?
Yeah.
Whether there are local branches of international banks or pure local institutions.
Yeah.
Of course, and this is almost like traditional questions that I always ask when you do an ecosystem zoom in, how do you see not the role, but the mindset advancement, for banks as far as fintech is concerned? Because the reason why I'm asking the question is because they might be seen as a threat, the fintechs at the beginning, but very soon they ended up in a collaboration framework because they clearly need each other, right?
Yeah.
So the banks need the startups for the technology and maybe the faster approach to market. On the other hand, startup need banks because of the liquidity, the capital, the customer reach, the security, etc. So where do you think is the cursor of this conversation?
Perhaps in the past, and maybe even still today, they can be seen as threats for sure. But I think what we've also observed within Namibia is that there's actually a lot of collaboration that is happening now, because I think digital transformation is happening, and typically the banks have a lot of legacy systems, and those type of setups are very hard to adopt from a technology perspective. It takes a lot and it's costly and so forth. So it makes sense, at least from my perspective, to partner so that you can be able to adopt quickly. And we have seen some banks who have partnered with fintechs to enable wallet solutions, for example. And I think that works well. And I think that's more what's happening. I think there's still very much pockets of, big banks. And I think in some cases, it may even be the experience of fintechs, at least from the conversations that we've had, that it's difficult for them to find partnerships with banks. But I think there are some banks who are partnering, and we are seeing how they're able to sort of leapfrog and be leaders in provision of wallet services, for example. So I think it makes sense to partner, especially, I've worked in a commercial bank before, and I know how, big ships type of system setups are in there, and to turn that thing around takes much more time, whereas fintech offer the opportunity for more agility, essentially. So that would be my take on that.
Yeah.
The next topic I want to talk about is strictly related to what we just talked about, the talent one. And the reason why I want to dig into the topic is that it's all about people.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, sometimes it takes one person with the right drive to change the perspective in a whole institutions, right? So I know there are several programs, and one has been launched yesterday, and maybe Valeria, you want to comment about it. And I would like to understand a little bit, how is the entrepreneurship culture in the country? Do you think that there is enough exposure for young talents to the fintech space, to the fintech solutions? The program you launched is about AI, right?
Yeah, so we have partnered with one of the local universities, NUST, and yesterday our deputy governor inaugurated what we are abbreviating as IRA. It's the Artificial Intelligence and Robotics Accelerator, which is a lab which the bank has essentially sponsored, and we are partnering with that local university, and that is to facilitate training in new tech areas like artificial intelligence, robotics, process automation, and so forth, so that we have that type of skill set for the benefit of the country. Being on a digital transformation journey ourselves, as a regulator, we've had to enable or build that capability within the central bank, because previously, we would need to sort of outsource these services or get that skill set in from vendors, which is unsustainable and is very costly. And as part of our current strategy, which just ended now, actually, we wanted to digitally transform the bank. We wanted to modernize the financial system as well as facilitate economic recovery. So in terms of digitally transforming the bank, in-house, we've done a lot in terms of automating our own processes, using our data to inform our decisions and putting it in the right format so that we can add value to it. And we have found that in some cases, it was quite challenging to find the right talent with the right skill and with the right exposure in terms of having worked with that. But I think we've done well to build that capability. For the first time, we have data scientists within the bank. We've always had developers, but we have more now just because of the demand in terms of the type of developments that we have to do. We have machine learning engineers, data engineers, but it's not an easy skill to come across. So we just wanted to be able to collaborate with the academia essentially to make sure that we are building that type of skill for the country.
What about the non-technical skills, like the entrepreneurship skills? And do you have some sort of framework so that if I am an entrepreneur in a country, I can learn how to build a company, how to bootstrap, very basic soft skills for entrepreneurs?
So within the central bank itself, I don't think we have this framework yet in place, but we do have a department that's very dedicated to working with the youth, our strategic communications department.
Okay.
And so they're very invested in the youth, and I think very much developing and all sorts of skills, including entrepreneurship. I think it's within the Namibian ecosystem. So our accelerators and all these other hubs, they're also very much invested in helping these entrepreneurs, build a business case. I think learning how to even just present, I think that's always the biggest one, where people have these very brilliant ideas.
And they don't know how to pitch it.
They don't know how to pitch it.
Yeah.
There was actually one fintech that presented, and then afterwards I spoke to them. I said, this is how you present.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, that's the reason why, and our listeners know it well. That's why I built Time Pledge 4 years ago, because I realized that although sometimes the ideas were brilliant, even the very good ideas were badly presented, because being able to tell a story is a skill, right?
Yes.
And by the way, I think that Namibia is going to be one of the next destinations of a time pledge mission. I want to come and discover, the ecosystem there.
we'd appreciate your visit and see what we can do.
I'm super happy that we almost meet by accident, because I was actually listening to Valeria in the Insights Forum, and then I made the connection because I also have a GFTN hat, in my work. As I said, okay, maybe there is something to discover, and and I'm now in this conversation discover with you guys, listening to the show, this new ecosystem. So we talked about talent. Let's talk about investment. So I suspect, because as an experienced VC, I know that Namibia is not exactly in the radar of big venture capitalists, right? I get it. Usually, when there is a nascent ecosystem, the way to approach it is that you have private investor that maybe do some angel or seed funding, right? And then for the best ideas that maybe are bigger than fintech, maybe they are just tech ideas still. Maybe the ones that are getting more traction, they get visibility from some maybe neighbor investors from South Africa, for example. So usually there is a a nearby ecosystem which is more mature, and because of the adjacency, there is a contamination of investment. Is that what's happening in Namibia?
Good question. I think there is a angel investor, I don't want to call it committee or
But
something.
it's a network, maybe,
Yes, it's
right?
a network. It does exist. How visible they are to the startup ecosystem, I'm not too sure on that. I know last week I saw on LinkedIn there was some other seed funding that was launched in Namibia. It was driven by Namibian.
Is there an event, by the way? Is there any fintech event in Namibia?
A fintech event?
No.
No.
There is any conference or something, or is there a tech forum or any event that talk about tech or fintech in the country?
I think there's effort for it, and it happens in small pockets.
Yeah,
yeah.
I would say so.
Yes.
But nothing big or as grand as, like the FinTech Festival here, for example.
Yes.
But I think there are smaller, even we've tried to get fintechs together just for conversation and to understand their needs.
Yeah.
But I can't think of like a big flagship event around that.
The reason why I'm asking is because then that's, it's almost like a storytelling exercise. But last week, there was the Guinea FinTech Week. So, and Guinea is Guinea Conakry, which is, actually much smaller than Namibia in terms of surface. It's probably 1/10. But they do have, they play on the neighbor's country. And even if it's a very small ecosystem, they decided to dedicate 1 week to fintech and become like the center of expertise for all the small countries around Guinea. Maybe that's an idea for you guys, because sometimes, as I was saying, you are, in terms of mindset, one of the most progressive central bankers I've ever talked with. In Africa,
thank you.
Right?
It's good to hear.
And the fact that we are here talking, simply the fact that you're here at the Singapore FinTech Festival, coming from 15,000 miles, to talk about your own ecosystem, to me is already, a sign of a very progressive mindset. I think that the challenge is that, and I don't know if you agree with me, that you need to find your own sweet spot and specialize in something, So, and then it could be from CBDCs to AI to, the wallet as a service, whatever that is. But that's the challenge, right? Because no startup will make enough money to be interesting, for a venture capitalist if they only do business in Namibia, right? So
Correct.
But also I think that there is a chance for each country to find its own sweet spot. I don't know if you agree, Valeria.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And actually, when you were talking about that, I just something else comes to mind. And usually, and there's a number of initiatives that the bank is working on as well. And maybe we can touch on that a little bit later. But one of the things that comes to mind is the size of our country. And I think to some extent, it could be a limitation. We are a country of 3 million people. And in engaging the banks, for example, in terms of payments, they always say payments is a volumes game, and there's only so many volumes. But I don't think that it does not mean that there's no opportunity for fintech. But I think that probably is one of the limitations for fintech currently. And I don't know if that's a good perspective or the way to look at it, but I think it needs to be more around opportunity, because I think there's always an opportunity to offer something, especially when you start to innovate. I think there could always be space for fintech, and I think that's what we're trying to encourage and develop.
I agree with that, and I think because we are so small, we can't have siloed efforts, which I think is the current status. I see there is mobilization for combined effort, and I think in the next few years we can see change, and I think that's definitely something I want to drive, to say, let's not compete with each other, because you then take 100,000 customers. What can you do with that? So, let's get together, let's share ideas, and let's support one another.
Talking about possible niches, we were having, and this is, of course, in no way you're not engaging your institution in answering to this question, but we were talking about embedded finance earlier on, right? And for example, tomorrow I'm moderating a panel on fintech and travels, fintech and tourism. And when you think of possibilities, when you think of the travel industry, even there, in terms of, insurance packages, mobile payments, buy now, pay later, you name it, maybe there is a way, if tourism is one of because I know it is, one of the big revenue streams of the country, maybe there is a way to showcase. I'm just sharing a cocktail conversation idea, right? Not engaging at all. But maybe there is a way to showcase, because you have so many players in the tourist space in the country, maybe there is a way to showcase embedded finance in the tourism, fintech for tourism, and Namibia could be a showcase for that.
Yeah, because that takes our volume up. I think there's a volume we're maybe not considering when it comes to fintechs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right?
I haven't particularly seen any fintechs making that connection, but I think it's definitely a good idea, because you are right in that tourism is one of the biggest sectors and contributors to our GDP. And so there are definitely a lot of people visiting the country, but I have not come across any fintech solutions that sort of make that link.
So, Valeria, before we wrap up, what are some of the digital transformation projects that Bank of Namibia has been involved in and launching that you want to share with us?
I think there's been quite a number of projects, especially within our current strategic period, particularly around digital transformation, because that was a key strategic objective for us. We've put in place, for example, like a regulatory using RegTech for regulation, a solution that sort of gets data real time. Not real time. We are aiming for real time now, but in a structured format from banks, and we use that information for regulation purposes. I think that has been quite a huge success for the bank. We've also partnered with the Revenue Collection Authority in Namibia to match financial transactions with import and export data, so that we make sure that there is no illicit financial flows, there is no under or over declaration of goods for the purposes.
I'm aware of the problem. Very smart.
Yes. And I think we are continuing to do that. We've recently also in April launched a very exciting project for the bank, which is around facilitating financial inclusion, where we have procured an instant payment solution platform for the banking institution. And that was quite special, because I think while we have quite a high financial inclusion rate in Namibia, it's standing at 78.1%. We recognize that it's good, and we have a very robust financial system, I must say, but we don't feel that it serves the rural areas, the remote, the informal part of our economy, and therefore we've procured that. The bank is making that investment, and we are availing that solution to the industry. So they would need to plug in, and we are leveraging platform technology to do that, so that we can achieve more financial inclusion, as well as facilitate interoperability within the market, which is quite key for us. We are also continuing to explore CBDCs for the central bank, and we really want to have a digital representation of our fiat currency. We are at very early stages of that, and we are actually we've just concluded a technical assistance mission with the IMF, and And through that process, we've collaborated and we've developed sort of a short, medium, and long-term strategy around that. We have also taken our key stakeholders along. We've put out a consultation paper late last year, and we got some good feedback that we'll basically be onboarding as we design and discover whether there's desirability around CBDC, particularly for the Namibian ecosystem. We also form part of the Common Monetary Area together with South Africa, Lesotho, as well as Eswatini. So on that front, from a cross-border perspective, we are also exploring whether CBDC has a role to play and can help us achieve more efficient processes, better pricing around cross-border payments. In the sub-Saharan Africa region in particular, the cost of cross-border payments is quite high. So through a project that we are calling Project Sunbird, we are also collaborating within the CMA to try and understand what is the opportunity for CBDC, and we are actually preparing to put out a diagnostic report, just looking at other payment modernization initiatives that are already happening and trying to see, with that in mind, is there still an opportunity? Are the persisting gaps that CBDC, for example, could still play a role? So we are quite excited. There's a number of other initiatives, but those are the ones that I would just highlight in terms of what we're doing.
As you can see, guys, there is a lot of activities, and I think I was right when I said that, Bank of Namibia is, at least in terms of mindset and openness, quite forward. So I congratulate you.
Thank you.
So our time is up. Thank you very much for being with us and for the very first time spend some time with Breaking Banks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And as far as BBE at the Singapore FinTech Festival, powered by the CXO Conversation, that's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTech Stage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week on Breaking Banks Europe.